Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cynispection for another exciting episode of whatever this is that we do here. I'm
Not
Gabe.
talk
That's
about
John.
relevant pop culture.
Yeah, talk about things you've never seen or heard of. Because everybody's talking about what is it right now? House of the Dragon,
House of Dragon, or maybe
or
Prey,
which we
or
were just talking about
yeah,
right
we
before we
were.
did this.
But
I
that's
guess
not
we
what
could
this
have.
podcast is for. This
We
podcast
could have
is talk
reviewed
about
Prey.
yeah,
We could have reviewed Prey. I feel like we could have.
it's fine.
But
This was
it's
much
not.
better.
Yes, it's not our main thing to because we are reviewing today. We're reviewing Days of Thunder, a movie that I had never seen. John, you brought it up. Why did you bring it up? I don't know what it came up last week.
Yeah,
I don't
so we
remember.
were just sitting around talking last week, and we were thinking about like, oh, what should we watch? And we were just bouncing around. And Gabe has a list of movies that I love that he's never seen, right? And like
Yes.
they're older movies. Most people probably haven't seen them. And it just so happens that Gabe and I have a shared love of like 80s esque movies. And I say 80s esque because this movie came out in 1990.
But it's super 80s,
It's
extremely
80s.
80s.
Like it was obviously
Ex-
written in the 80s. It was shot in the 80s. Like everything was 80s about this movie. And that's why it's freaking awesome.
It's awesome. I mean, we can start with that. It's awesome. Like
Yeah.
it holds up really well. It's almost like like a remake of Top Gun.
Mhm.
It just has a bit of a like shuffle with characters. Like there's a guy who's like the Goose, that's John C. Reilly. There's the Iceman, who's Mickey Rooney. There's like the
love interest
bald
is
guy.
Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, Nicole Kidman plays Kelly McGillis. Is that her name? I think that's her name.
Claire. Hang on, Nicole Kidman is Claire.
Yeah, I know, but Kelly McGillis is the actress
yeah,
from Top Gun.
in Top Gun. And then Robert Duvall's character is the equivalent to Viper.
So I was gonna say he's like the guy that's in Back to the Future, the bald guy.
I would.
Mentor.
He's kind of a Viper. I would think the bald guy is Fred Thompson, the guy who plays the owner of the team or whatever.
That's Randy Quaid.
Randy Quaid, yeah.
Before he lost his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's basically the same thing. Tom Cruise plays the same character, which why wouldn't he? He's been doing the same thing for 30 years now, or more, 40 years, I think. Which is like it just I mean I feel like something I kept thinking throughout the movie. It's just right now like people expect like their main characters or protagonists to be like perfect from the start and just like gradually the arc, at least in big movies like this one, because this was a blockbuster, this was an event film, but they expect like they find it even politically correct to have a protagonist that's not like super likable or doesn't have their feet on the ground at the beginning. But here, like Tom Cruise is like an unlikable, like douchey kind of bro kind of guy.
He's Maverick. I mean,
he's Maverick again. Exactly. He's Maverick again. He's kind of douchey. Like that was a common thing in the 80s too. Like we talked about it with the last Starfighter. Many Karate Kid. They're like kind of like douchey guys that need to be taught a lesson. I guess Karate Kid to a lesser extent, but it's a very 80s thing to like you have like an unlikable douchey guy. No, sorry, a likable douchey guy, because you still like him even though they're if you think about it. Like he kisses Nicole Kidman as she's doing her job analyzing him.
I mean, granted, he does that because they tricked him.
No. That's when he touches her leg. He kisses her when she's like checking his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So he does it twice, I guess. He does a bit of a pretty conflictive behavior twice.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, he's a guy who needs to be taught a lesson. He doesn't learn it until he's like put on the edge. He thinks he's, invincible. He realizes it's not. Thanks to some other character having a tragic fate. Before it was Goose, here it was Mickey Rooney.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's again these days a story like this, like somebody has to learn not to be like, even Iron Man, the first one was like that, right?
Yeah.
The first one, but that was,
yes, it was
15 years ago, 14 years ago.
I mean, this movie could never be made now, ever. Like they would never touch this movie.
Never. Like
funny
NASCAR.
Enough, yeah, it doesn't have any staying power. It's a one-hit movie. It is. ironically by the same director as Top Gun, Tony Scott, which is hilarious.
It was great. Okay, I was thinking about that because Tony Scott, may he rest in peace. He passed away, but like he did some really awesome movies throughout his career. Like he did so many really good movies, but people talk about his brother Ridley Scott a lot more than they talk about him because Ridley Scott has more range. He's good at sci-fi, he's good at comedy, he's good at epics.
I mean,
like
Tony Scott was the Michael Bay before there was a Michael Bay.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Bay, took a lot from Tony Scott. You're right.
Yeah, I mean like his action shots, his like blurred scenes, even
sunsets.
His color palette is very similar. So the cinematography is, I mean, it's borrowed if you're looking at a Michael Bay film, but that's also somebody who we love on this show because at the end of the day, this is a popcorn flick type of show where we're going to talk about things that we just like and that are fun and happy and like that don't need to be deep analyzed, right? Until we talk about Westworld,
but that one begs over analyzing. Like I don't think you can, there's many things that you can't really compare, and I think this movie can only be because right now, like people keep like everybody's talking about Top Gun Maverick, like Top Gun Maverick and blah blah blah, and it's like okay, fine, but like Top Gun Maverick is it's great. We both liked it very much, but it's a completely different animal to what Top Gun was. Like if you watch them, but they barely feel like sequels, like tone wise, themes wise. Like Maverick is more about like, being older and Top Gun is about
Maverick is like a coming to age type tale, whereas this like Top Gun and Days of Thunder are much closer to like you could have taken Maverick, out of Top Gun, and you could have brought him into the world of Days of Thunder and been like, he was an ace fighter pilot, and now he's a kick-ass NASCAR driver.
And it would have been believable because
those movies, completely believable.
Yeah, because those movies exist in that bubble.
That world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and then this movie's, it's a different kind of thing. So it really pretends like, oh, Top Gun. It's like, okay, but the original is not like that. Like the original they're borderline comedies. Like they're really self-aware, dumb movies that are,
well, they know that they're going to make one, right? Like these movies were never made to make a sequel. They were a one-time thing. If you look at them, they're a little over an hour and a half, right? So they're around that 90-minute runtime. And they're dumb.
Popcorn movies. Also heavy, like, Top Gun was, I believe, famously sponsored by the Navy to recruit people. This movie, I'm sure, was
sponsored by everyone.
But especially NASCAR.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've never had any interest in NASCAR. I don't know anything about NASCAR. But after watching this movie, I was like, I got to go to a NASCAR. For sure. I was like, I got to go to one. Because it just makes it look. Of course, NASCAR people don't crash all the time and stuff like that, But
they used to though. Fun. Actually, in the 90s, like the rubbing is racing, it actually comes from like Dale Earnhardt. So like that's a quote directly from a NASCAR driver. And there's a scene where they actually interview real NASCAR drivers in the movie.
Yes, I noticed that too. I was like, these guys must be the real deal.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Those were all real NASCAR drivers. Just so you know, I looked up the runtime. This is Days of Thunder, an hour 47 minutes. Top Gun, an hour 50 minutes. They're literally 3 minutes apart in runtime. So it is, the pacing is great. It's a perfect paced movie, in my opinion. It gets you right into the story. Within 10 minutes, we are into the heart of the story. Like, it's crazy enough. The first act of this movie is incredibly short. Incredibly short. So you don't even
it doesn't really spend, like, you don't know much about Tom Cruise besides, I guess the only thing that you know is that he's a hothead and that his father kind of like involved him in some illegal activity. So he's trying to.
But you don't even find that out until halfway through the movie.
Halfway through the movie.
Yeah.
When he starts bonding with Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Robert Duvall because I didn't realize how much. I think he's pretty old now, so he's not in movies anymore. He's probably like in his 80s. Probably retired, playing golf, enjoying life. Good for him.
He was born in 1931.
He's 92. Yeah. 91.
He's filming 2 movies right now, by the way.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Well, good for him. I hope we see them because that man is like awesome. Like he plays this character who's like, again, it's a dumb movie, but he plays it straight. He's like, he's doing his thing, He's
And
like
he
playing.
doesn't. He hasn't aged since the 80s. I don't think he got like old and then just stayed old forever.
So he was the Godfather,
Yep.
and then he got old, and then he's just like old
Yeah.
forever. Yes, I agree. Yeah, that's Robert Duvall.
Amazing.
And
in this movie,
then
though.
yeah,
Amazing.
great in this movie. What about Randy Quaid before he lost his mind?
I mean, honestly, in this movie, he is. You can tell that he's going to lose his mind. Like, can we be honest?
Yes.
Like, you can kind of tell he's losing his damn mind because he's a little insane in this movie. I mean,
Yes.
like, this is 6 years before Independence Day, and like, he's still the same character. Like, this character is the same character in Independence Day, in my mind. Like, he's not very much different. He's a little off the wall. Randy Quaid's supposed to be what? He owns a car dealership and he wants to create a NASCAR race team. That's the whole premise. By the way, that's the whole premise of this movie. That's a little plot that you need to make a good movie. By the way,
Yeah.
is the plot of this movie is Randy Quaid's character, who is Tim Dayland, wants to create a NASCAR team, and he wants to get the best car driver and the best car builder in NASCAR to build a car and win Daytona. And that's the entire plot. Like, we don't even need John explains the plot for this because it's that short. It is literally, that's the whole plot of the movie.
And if they did Days of Thunder Maverick or whatever you want to call it, Days of Thunder Trickle, they would add, as usual, 25 layers of complication.
Yeah.
I guess that's also something that I appreciated from Top Gun Maverick. And not to turn this into a conversation about Top Gun Maverick, but like, there's like, they got to bomb something, right? Let's not spoil that movie, but they got to bomb something. And they say, oh, this is the enemy's headquarters. But they don't tell you who the enemy is. They don't tell you, like, is it, they have things that make it look like they're sort of North Korea, Russia, like all American enemies are present there. But you never see their faces. It's just like the enemy. And that's all you need to know. And that sort of simplicities like were prevail in the 80s and why these movies are so great.
And rewatchable, by the way. That's why it makes them so rewatchable.
Incredibly rewatchable. I will be rewatching this one because I just had a lot of fun with it. It was never boring. The cinematography was really good, like especially in the NASCAR. Like you were right in the car, like they didn't have like
feel how fast that they were going.
Yeah,
like they did
sound
really
design was great. You could hear, it's really good. I would watch this in the theater for sure. It's a great movie. I feel like I'd never seen it. You'd seen it.
Yeah.
But it should be talked about more because like people love the, Top Guns and the cocktails and the, from the 80s, Tom Cruise, Risky Business, all that stuff. But they don't talk about this one as much. Like,
no, this is kind of left off the list. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm actually surprised you brought up Cocktail. I don't think most people have seen Cocktail. I've seen Cocktail. I don't even know how many times, but
I haven't seen it since I was a kid. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, I bartended for 10 years and I blame Cocktail for that part of my life, but this movie, it should get more praise. I mean, just for the cast alone. I mean, we said Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman. Okay. Then you have Robert Duvall. You have Michael Rooker, who's amazing in this, by the way. Michael Rooker's character is
really great. It reminded me of his performance in Cliffhanger.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
He did. Yeah. And then, I mean, of course, everybody knows him now from either The Walking Dead or Guardians of the Galaxy. But he's in this. John C. Reilly is in this in a non-comedic role, which is kind of funny. Like, he is a little bit of the comedic relief, but that's not the only thing that he does. And if you've seen John C. Reilly, funny enough, in Guardians of the Galaxy as well, he usually plays like that more jovial, like comedic role. In this, he does too, but not to that extent where he's kind of like laughable.
He's just a best friend. He's set up as a friend. It feels like his role was probably cut because at some point they sort of set up that he has a past, that his father died or something like that. And I guess the point of that scene is to show like what Tom Cruise ends up learning in the end is that he can't be like a maverick, just like risking his life and just playing it like it's irrelevant, and just he learns to contain himself and learn and become a better driver because of it. And I think that's probably the point of that scene, but it also felt like they could have set up something more with a character who sort of disappears in the second half, John C. Reilly.
Yeah, he kind of after Michael Rooker's character becomes friends with Tom Cruise, which is an awesome scene, by the way, in very 80s, which is they both get out of the hospital and they race down the hallway, and they're basically just tormenting everybody around them because Michael Rooker and Tom Cruise's character hate each other at the beginning. So they're tormenting everybody in the hospital, on the NASCAR track. They literally almost kill themselves because they're trying to beat each other up in cars. And then they have to drive together to meet the NASCAR commissioner. And when they do, they just take two cars and literally going down the street with the most 80s kind of montage ever are just literally busting these cars up. Some reason they like go down a beach at one point and like whatever, nobody cares. And then they like walk in and then they just say, "You want to call it even?" And then they say yes, which honestly is the most dude thing ever. Like guys, that's how they fix their problems. They like hash it out and then they're like, good, done.
Yeah,
right?
Let's move on.
Let's move on. And that is exactly what they do in this movie. They literally almost kill each other like 3 times. And then they're like, okay, we're good.
Completely reckless. Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good scene. It's also preceded by the scene in the wheelchair and, them racing in wheelchairs. Then there's that awesome scene where they get pulled over and supposedly being arrested, but it's actually a stripper, which leads to a pretty good joke where Tom Cruise believes Nicole Kidman, who's a doctor, his doctor is also a stripper.
So he tries to like make a pass on her because the stripper made a pass on him.
Right.
I mean, that was an awesome, but those are the types of jokes you would never see in a movie today.
Not these days.
Would never get made ever.
Not these days. Yeah. And what do you think about Nicole Kidman? Was this her first role here, like in the US? Was that her first role?
I don't know if this was her breakout role. Let me.
Like
no, she had a couple things before, but not much. I mean, this was her first real big.
This was her thing. Yeah, I mean,
she was on some like mini series and some other like little things here and there, but nothing like. I mean, this was it.
Yeah, so she was good in this. She spoke with an Australian accent, another 80s thing. Like, what is an Australian doctor doing in Daytona? Like it's just whatever.
But they
it
don't.
Is what it is.
I mean, this was before you needed plot fixes for it. Like fans now demand a plot fix, and this is something that you and I talk about quite often. But in the 80s, they didn't care. Like it was like Australian doctor in Daytona. Cool.
We just went with it. Like, who cares? It doesn't really matter. Like, it's just. I mean, she's there. She's the love interest. She's pretty smart lady, like she's pretty cold towards him when she asked to. I liked her performance. She was good. I don't know, the character was definitely underwritten.
I do think it's hilarious the height difference between the two of them, but the camera makes it look like they're the same height.
Like it's not there. Yeah. Tom Cruise, like camera angles for Tom Cruise are very, very helpful, or they always have been because he's a really short man.
Well, because he makes sure that is the case. I think he's 5'4" and she's like 5'7", or he's 5'7" and she's 5'9" or something like that. She's tall.
Oh, she's 5'9". I thought she was taller. Okay.
Yeah, she's pretty tall, but no, she's 5'11". Sorry, Let's see how tall he is. I don't know. Anyway, she's like tall. He's not. Yeah.
So I wanted to show you something, read you something that I like. There's like pretty substantial Wikipedia entry into this movie, surprisingly, because as we said, the movie's not talked about as much. So apparently the movie had a lot of problems during production. It went over budget, it went over time. It's like this whole thing. But this is what's funny. I'm just going to read you the Wikipedia entry. It says, in Daytona, Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who are the producers, spend $400,000 to have a vacant storefront in their hotel converted into their private gym with a large neon sign reading Days of Thunder. Simpson also kept a closet full of Donna Karan dresses to offer the attractive women his assistants found on the beach, and held private parties with friends like rapper Tony Locke. I don't know how to pronounce that person's name, but the 80s, man.
Yeah, they just didn't care.
Just did it. Give me a neon sign, a gym with a neon sign with the name of my movie. Okay, $400,000. It's insane. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, they produced several movies together after this. They produced The Rock, they produced Bad Boys, and then Jerry Bruckheimer I think Don Simpson passed away after The Rock, if I'm not mistaken. I think the movie's dedicated to his memory.
Yeah.
And then Jerry Bruckheimer has been producing, Pirates of the Caribbean, and National
all
Treasure.
of the Scott films. Yeah.
He used to produce every Michael Bay movie, but now Michael Bay just does things on his own. And Bruckheimer
So
has been doing some things.
I just stumbled onto something about this movie. And if we were talking about the cast before, okay, Hans Zimmer scored this movie.
Yes, which was, I did notice it was a really good score.
Hans Zimmer scored this movie. Like, come on.
Where do they get all these people? So also the screenwriter is Robert Towne, who was one of the most revered screenwriters in Hollywood. He wrote Chinatown. Later in his career, he did more movies like this, but he was a known script doctor, and he was very respected in Hollywood. He's still alive, potentially writing. I don't know, but anyway, it's got this massive talent in front of and behind the camera, and it's all for a NASCAR movie about Tom Cruise being douchey. It's amazing.
I mean, I can't believe that Hans Zimmer. I mean, I knew that the movie was good. Like, I liked the music, and I think I even said something to you about you're gonna love the overly synth 1980s music montages.
Yeah,
and yeah, that's Hans Zimmer there.
Hans Zimmer. But anyway, I mean, it's great. You should go watch it. We didn't spoil the whole thing, I guess, this time.
Yeah, I mean, we actually did an entire review under time, and we didn't spoil the movie. You should definitely watch it. It's honestly, I know it came out in 1990, but this movie should, one, hold a better than a 6 out of 10 ranking on IMDb, and two, it's totally 80s. And
totally 80s. I mean, it's like Total Recall. I feel like 1990 and 1991 were still 80s.
Yeah,
they still felt like the 80s, and this one definitely feels like the 80s.
But if you've seen Days of what was the one with Will Ferrell in it? This is the movie that spawned that Talladega Nights.
Oh,
Talladega Nights is the parody film of
this
Days of Thunder.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think John C. Reilly's in that, actually.
He was in every Adam McKay, Will Ferrell movie.
Yeah, so, but I mean, I would just say watch it. It's a great movie. It's on HBO Max now, streaming. And yeah. Anything else you have to say about this awesomely 80s movie that's in the 90s?
No, I mean, I just, speaking of the 80s, Allison Lombard said Elizabeth Shue with a heart emoji. We agree. She's an 80s lady, so we will love her in this show. She was in Back to the Future in the 80s. Tons of movies in the 80s. So, Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
She was actually not in Back to the Future. She was in Back to the Future Part 2 and 3. She recast.
It was recast after Back to the Future 1 because of Yeah,
that lady was recast. I don't know what's up with her now. All right, John. Like and subscribe. Everybody like and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to this. That's Jawfirth. I'm Gabe. And we will see you next week for another exciting episode of Cynispection.